Even though these crimes are going down a little bit, stuff is out of control.
A break-in at mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon's house, reigniting concerns over quality of life crimes. Her message to her opponent.
A bill that could provide students in failing schools a chance to succeed, raising an alarm for some tonight, worried it could put some students in a bucket.
And former President Trump one step closer to clinching the GOP nomination. Coming up, we'll take a closer look at his South Carolina win as Nikki Haley reacts to a defeat in her own state.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
A break-in at mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon's house, bringing the quality of life crime debate literally to her door. She says while violent crime should still be a top priority for the city, so-called low-level crimes like break-ins and thefts still need to be addressed.
I know that the police focus on, going after the violent offenders, and we got to do that, but there's a balance. Right. And we've got to be able to deal with these issues because this is why people leave.
Good evening, I'm Maxine Stryker.
And I'm Vincent Hill. As Mayor Brandon Scott continues to tout a reduction in violent crimes, his opponent says residents are not only scared, but frustrated.
Friday, during a crime walk in Merle Park.
Goes back to the quality of life. This is a prime example.
Mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon addressing quality of life crimes. Later that night,
in reference to a male stealing a bike from his garage.
One of those crimes, a burglary, walking its way to her house.
My son called me on the phone and said somebody broke through the door of the garage. He saw them leaving with the bike.
Dixon feeling the same pain as much of the city.
When I come in the house or bring my car and park it in the garage, I don't want to have to feel nervous and have to look around. I shouldn't have to coming into my neighborhood, and no one should. People are experiencing this all over the city.
According to BPD data, just down the street from Dixon's house, a stolen car. One of over 1,000 stolen so far this year.
Keeping people alive and stopping people from dying should be the #1 focus.
This week at City Hall, Mayor Brandon Scott blaming quality of life crimes like auto thefts on the criminal justice system.
I'm not a judge, right? I don't determine how long someone stays in jail.
We need our cars to be out front when we get ready to go to work in the morning.
Not so fast, says retired Judge Wanda Hurd.
The mayor is responsible for focusing and targeting on the quality of everything that happens in everyone's life.
Back in Southwest Baltimore, just around the corner from the person looking to unseat the mayor.
Car was just carjacked by a black male with a gun. They took her car.
An armed carjacking, one of over 50 so far this year.
And that's why we really have to deal with the quality of life of crime. Burglaries, car thefts, carjacks. I mean, people don't feel safe, and it's very frustrating.
Dixon hoping for a better handle on Baltimore's crime problem.
And even though these crimes are going down a little bit, stuff is out of control.
As Vince mentioned, retired Chief Judge Wanda Hurd
in what it would take to get funding for that particular issue to keep those individuals still on private home detention.
He estimates it will take about $2 million to fund that program. Yesterday, Senate President Bill Ferguson said the state can't just write a check. The funding has to go through the budgeting process. He says the judiciary should have told lawmakers about the problem much sooner.
We have to find a short-term solution for those who are currently on monitoring, and then we have to have a broader conversation about where this should land. Ankle monitoring oversight and administration in the long term, but right now we have to solve a problem that we shouldn't be learning about in this moment, in this week. This is something that the judiciary had knowledge of should have given us insight into ahead of session. And yet again, it feels like we have been stuck to solve a situation that could have been solved with thoughtful conversation.
The governor's office says the program was designed to be a one-time funded operation. It wasn't supposed to continue to be allocated. However, he's encouraging the judiciary to work with lawmakers to continue that program. This is a developing story. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the money and keep you updated online at our website, foxbaltimore.com.
In Annapolis, lawmakers are pushing for school choice, giving kids stuck in failing or even dangerous schools a way out. This as we continue to report on failing and unsafe schools in Baltimore City. But tonight, not everyone is on board.
House Bill 1027.
The Right to Learn Act aims to provide students in failing schools statewide a chance to succeed.
If your child isn't learning and they're in public school, then what are your options? If your child is unsafe while in school, then what are parents to do?
Delegate Mark Fisher of Calvert County says House Bill 1027 would give students attending a failing school the opportunity to attend an alternative school, whether it be private or parochial. The bill classifying a failing school as one that's been given 1 star for at least the prior 3 consecutive school years. As for violent or disruptive students, they'd be given the option to attend a military boarding school, and the school system could foot the bill.
The governor credits this intervention with saving his life.
Maryland's own Governor Wes Moore attended Valley Forge Military Academy. His mother enrolled him after she says he began to hang out with the wrong crowd. Fisher says there seems to be a systemic problem with school discipline and juvenile crime, pointing to 2 stories Fox 45 broke involving dangerous kids.
Last year, an 11-year-old was picked up by police in connection with more than a dozen carjackings. Recently, a 15-year-old rapist was placed in Patterson High School in Baltimore. Stories of out-of-control children are becoming all too common.
A Project Baltimore investigation recently uncovered a 15-year-old convicted rapist was allowed to attend a Baltimore City high school, and the public was not alerted because he's a juvenile. And it's not just potential danger lurking in classrooms in Baltimore City. Some city schools are also failing to live up to their potential when it comes to student performance. State test results last year found 13 Baltimore City high schools had 0 students test proficient in math. There's even a lawsuit against Baltimore City schools alleging misuse of tax dollars as students continue to struggle in the classroom. However, there is concern this bill could put kids in a bucket who could potentially have a disability.
I do want to caution the committee with amendments that we do not participate in essentially targeting kids perceived as having bad behavior.
And Raya Gupta, a policy researcher with Strong Schools Maryland, is urging lawmakers to give schools more time to improve under the Kerwin plan.
This bill, if passed, will use public dollars to cause harm on public schools. This bill labels schools as quote unquote failing schools in a manner that is not recommended or utilized by MSDE. On top of that, it retaliates against these struggling schools.
Now, it is important to note that David Smith, the executive chairman of our parent company, Sinclair Broadcast Group, is financially connected to the ongoing lawsuit against the Baltimore City public school system.
Meanwhile, tonight, Fox 45 is continuing to press Baltimore City public schools after one of its high school math teachers was arrested for rape. Here's what we know so far. Mustafa Pitts is being held in jail without bond. Yesterday, Baltimore City Public Schools confirmed he was placed on administrative leave following that arrest. Pitts teaches at Reach Partnership here in Baltimore City. He's been employed by city schools for the past year and a half. According to court documents, the 46-year-old was arrested back on February the 3rd after an adult called police and reported he raped a minor family member earlier that day. The document goes on to say that the victim told investigators Pitts had been raping her for the past 5 years.
We questioned the district if the school was aware of any prior complaints involving Pitts and his students, asking how many other complaints have been filed against him and what, if any, disciplinary action was taken. And is the district working with police to ensure there are no other potential victims? As of tonight, we have not received a response.
Still ahead, former President Trump is one step closer to the GOP nomination after winning the South Carolina Republican primary. A closer look at his win and how Nikki Haley feels about a defeat in her own state.
And later, a former state senator sounding the alarm over Maryland's nomination process, why he says the flawed system could have dangerous consequences for the state.
An even bigger win than we anticipated. And I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
Former President Donald Trump has won South Carolina's Republican primary in what some are calling an easy win over former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley in her home state. The win puts Trump one step closer to clinching his third GOP nomination.
And Emerson from our Sinclair station in Charleston, South Carolina, has a closer look at Trump's path to victory.
Former President Donald Trump managed a decisive victory over the state's former governor and UN ambassador today, Nikki Haley. Not a big surprise here. Trump's been leading in the polls in South Carolina, and this crowd at the state fairgrounds showed his immense popularity.
Please welcome the next president.
And the minute polls closed here, Donald Trump came out swinging against President Joe Biden, getting ready for the general election.
We're going to be up here on November 5th, and we're going to look at Joe Biden, and we're going to look him right in the eye. He's destroying our country, and we're going to say, Joe, you're fired. Get out. Get out, Joe. You're fired.
Nikki Haley's name never even getting mentioned by Trump, who is looking to November already. There were plenty of South Carolina political luminaries basking in the glow of a Trump victory tonight, hoping to catch the tailwinds of his success.
I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now. Never been like that. And a big part of that is the people standing behind me.
While there are still a handful of primaries over the next week, all eyes are on March 5th, Super Tuesday. That's when Nikki Haley is really going to have to make a major play in order to get past Donald Trump. Reporting in Columbia, I'm Ann Emerson.
And despite a defeat in her own state, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley says she will continue her run for president, telling supporters that she is a woman of her word. Haley also congratulated Trump on his victory tonight.
I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory. And I want to thank the people of South Carolina for using the power of your voice. No matter the results, I love the people of our state. we accomplished together, and I love how we united during our worst challenges and tragedy.
Haley also telling that crowd that she still has no plans on becoming Trump's running mate. I tell you what, Maxine, I don't know about you, but I am tired of this cold weather. I'm ready for spring. And Jasmine, I know we probably have some 60s coming up here in a few days, right?
Oh, we've got a few days in the 60s. We're talking a nice and warm pattern that is on the way. It's going to feel much like spring over the next week. So as we enter the month of March, looking at a decent start temperature-wise. Now, we are nice and dry on the HD radar. We had a couple of showers, mainly impacting southern Maryland. Now we're back to dry weather, and we stay that way tonight. It is going to get cold as temperatures drop to the 20s, but we do start to quickly warm up as we head into the afternoon. Temperatures will stay close to average, but later next week we have that nice warm up, and we are talking temperatures well above average, not just here, but around the entire region. That's going to make it feel more like spring as we head into the month of March. Coming up, I'll have a closer look at just how warm it gets and when you can expect the next weather maker and chance for rain in my full forecast. Back to you.
Founder of a local nonprofit making waves in the city. Coming up later, how Stand is helping students achieve their academic dreams.
Global debt surpassing $300 trillion. I'm Atra El-Nashar with which countries hold the highest burden.
A new report is sounding the alarm about the hundreds of trillions of dollars of debt held by nations around the world. Economists say it's a threat to global security over the next decade. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has more.
The world has a debt problem to the tune of $313 trillion. It's a new record and more than $100 trillion higher than it was just 10 years ago, according to the Institute of International Finance. The top contributors of a spike at the end of last year that brought the total over the $300 trillion mark: France, Germany, and the United States, which as of this week is $34.3 trillion in debt.
We have to resolve the fiscal situation, which is doing real damage to both our economy and our national security.
With higher taxes, experts say, or raising the retirement age.
What is the next generation and the next generation and the next generation going to have to pay for?
On the other side of the globe, in China, home to the second largest economy in the world, the debt to GDP ratio just hit a new record, carrying a debt load almost 3 times the size of its economy. A common source of pain everywhere is the sting of high interest rates as central banks around the world fight inflation.
We have to it's our job, it's what society has asked us to do, is to get inflation down.
Growth could be lower if the effects of monetary policy turn out stronger than expected.
Both the UK and Japan recently slipped into recession. Some nations in sub-Saharan Africa spend more than 7.5% of GDP on interest payments alone, more than they spend on healthcare and education.
It crowds out the ability of those governments to be able to put money to work for human capital, for climate, for infrastructure, for the things they need to put their country onto the right pathway.
Newly released details from the Federal Reserve's latest meeting show there are more Fed officials who are worried about cutting interest rates too soon and risking a spike in inflation than there are those who are worried about the damage of keeping rates high for too long. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar.
Coming up, a former state senator raising concerns about how the Juvenile Services Secretary got his job, while he says Marylanders' nomination process is imperfect.
The founder of One Local Profit, shaping and changing young minds across Baltimore through his mentorship. After the break, we'll introduce you to Tigona Duncan and his STAND program.
And we're getting ready for a chilly night with temperatures falling to the 20s, but we have a nice warm up on the way next week. I'll let you know how it looks coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
And now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus.
Juvenile crime has been a focus of this year's legislative session in Annapolis, with Democratic lawmakers highlighting 3 pillars of their proposal. They want to extend probation for young offenders, expand certain criminal charges to children as young as 10 years old, and reform the intake process within the Department of Juvenile Services. Part of that bill would require DJS to get cases to state's attorneys in 15 days rather than 25. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates says he'd like to get cases sooner than that.
I would love to be able to be there day one with the intake. That way we can work with the police to put together a better case. 15 days I still feel is way too long.
However, parts of the proposal are in conflict with the messaging from DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi.